Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a class from our 2022 Elul Learning Series.
So Le'el Orech Din, another Kalir poem. This is the conclusion of the piyutim that feed into the kedusha, but of course this one has nothing to do with kedusha. As Rabbi Reuben Hammer Lev Shalem has noted, this is really the first of the piyutim that focuses on din, on judgment. Okay, which of course is a major theme for the holidays, especially Rosh Hashanah, and well, for both of them. And remember the earlier ones we saw God as King, the Gaonic additions to the short things that we add to the Amidah, for the emphasis on those is Chaim, Sefer HaChaim. But this is the one that really focuses on din, and it's all creation. You'll see inside the piyut if you've looked at it. Judgment is not just on Bnei Yisrael; it's everybody. But what I find very interesting, and I just want you to look closely, in the first elements of the piyut, starting with Aleph. Okay, so let's look at the beginning. Then there's the introduction, Uvachein L'cha Hakol Yaktiru. We will all crown God as sovereign. In other words, it doesn't mean we are empowered to crown him, right? But it means that we are recognizing his kingship. And so now they're going to talk about all the lameds, okay? So the beginning is Ubachein L'cha Hakol Yaktiru, and we're now going to recognize the crown on El Orech Din. That's those lameds. Le'el Orech Din, Levochein Lebavot, Legole Amukot, la, right? We're going to crown the king who is the ... So that's what all those lameds mean. But look, Le'el Orech Din, right? The God who establishes judgment. Orech Din, in and of itself, is a technical term that you find in Pirkei Avot, where it says that a judge should not be an Orech Din. An Orech Din is somebody who prepares a case for trial in a court. And the judge, of course, is not supposed to do any preparation, so to speak, of determining the innocence or guilt of the various litigants, right? He's supposed to be, or she's supposed to be, totally neutral. Okay, so Orech Din here then is not meaning the kind of a thing where you have a lawyer representing one side or the other. It means who's organizing the judgment, who's setting up the judgment. Okay, so that's God. Now, Bochein Levavot, all right? I'm going to get back to that in a moment. But, Bochein Levavot mean gods who tests souls, right? Tests souls, checks out if someone's lave is whole, is honest, is sincere. Remember, the lave being the not just the pump of the blood, but it is the center of emotion, of intellect, of thought, okay? So when you check the heart, Bochein Klayot Olev means God's looking deeply inside of a person. And that follows Legole Amukot, right? He reveals deep things, right? Things that are deep. It's parallel to that, deep within the soul, within the heart of a person. He can dredge. God, in his making judgment, can pull up stuff that's hidden away in your memory or the result of things tendencies that are within you. So there's no hiding. The point is, there's no hiding anything from God, from this judge. He'll find every bit of evidence for you and against you. Okay? Dover Mesharim, he speaks justly, justice, right? Meshar, Yosher, Yashar, right? It's straight, but the point being justice. Then Lohogedeyot, here too. Hogeh means to deduce, to reason things out. So God can reason things out, deyot, thoughts, deep thoughts. The verb lada'at, which today we use for all kinds of things. I know, ani odea, right? I know. In ancient times, especially in the Bible, yada implies intimate thoughts, deep thoughts. So that notion of depth. So for example, when a man and a woman sexually, get together, it's vayeda so-and-so at so-and-so. They knew, so-and-so knew someone, right? Knew so-and-so. Carnal knowledge is a term often used, but that's sort of negative. But the point is, here, Raketchem yadati mikol mishpachot ha'adama, Amos, okay, chapter 3, just you have I known from among all the nations of the earth. Therefore, I'm going to hold you responsible. I'm going to, hold you more responsible for your acts. Knowing in the sense here is then it's not sexual. Knowing in the sense that I grasp all the intimacies in your life. Okay, so all of this is judgment, right? Okay, so the aleph through the hay is judgment. The interesting thing is, the rest of the poem, as we're going to see, is either sort of neutral. There's some repetition, but there's a lot of emphasis on righteousness, on forgiveness, okay? And these other things will pop up, there's no question. But you will see there's a strong emphasis on that. And the thing to keep in mind is that this is not something that this poem or the poet made up. It is part and parcel of a kind of a duality that exists in Jewish theology with respect to God, right? God is the master judge, but God is also the compassionate God, right? And I think some of you have heard me talk about, you may have studied yourself, the Rashi on Breshit, chapter 2, verse 4b, where it says, on the day when Adonai Elohim created man, or created the world, sorry. On the day when God created, yes, but God is called Adonai Elohim. And in the first creation story, what is God called? Reshit bara
Elohim.
Elohim. That's all, right? Whereas in the second story, it's Adonai Elohim. So based on Breshit Rabbah, Rashi, and anybody remember what Rashi says? And if you've studied it before, did anybody remember? Why is it Adonai Elohim?
Is it, I don't remember, it's just a guess, but is it something about the angels?
No, not angels, no. All right, I will tell you. So the Midrash says that when God desired to create the world, at first, he used the principle of din, of judgment. Elohim in chapter 1, there's a sense, Elohim is sometimes used in the Bible as a surrogate for judge. Okay, or it could mean the oracle. It's not clear, but it's a term used in judgment. Okay, so Elohim, the rabbis understood to mean represents God's capacity to judge. Okay, but according to Breshit Rabbah, according to the Midrash, he tried to create the world using the principle of judgment, and it wouldn't hold together. It just wouldn't stick together. And so then he realized that he had to incorporate and bring together with judgment another one of his attributes, which ends up being his primary attribute in the second. And what is that? Adonai, which is what?
Are you going to link it to Rachmanis?
Yes, Rachamim, not I. The Torah does. The Torah does that already. I'll get to that in a second.
But aren't there much better names that link?
No. That's what the rabbi, that's how it's, hold on. I'll get back to that. Let me just finish this and I'll explain, okay? So Rashi, the Midrash says, so God combined Rachamim and Din. It was like what I call a cosmic epoxy. Remember epoxy glue? Very strong glue. It came in two different tubes, remember? I think they still use it.
No, it's used.
Very strong, right? And you mix them together and it's terrific. So he combined judgment with compassion and it held. And then Rashi adds on that the notion based upon Adonai Elohim, what comes first? Adonai. Adonai is compassion. Okay? And that was, so Rashi says, Hikdim, he gave preference, he put first compassion, implying that in the mix of the two, it wasn't 50-50, it was sort of 51-49, favoring Rachamim. And if you look at the poem, you will see and add up all the passages that deal with Din, and the other ones that deal with Rachamim, or remembering God's people, protecting God's people, okay, you'll find that the tendency in the poem also leans to the side of Rachamim, of compassion. So God's judgment is tempered by God's compassion. Now, where in the Bible do we see that Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, Adonai, is associated powerfully with compassion? You all know it. We're going to say it multiple times on Yom Kippur.
With the passage from Kisisa, which is the attribute?
Yes.
Which 34, chapter 34.
34 verses 6 and 7. Adonai El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim V'Rav. Right? God who's a compassionate God, full of loving kindness, forgiving of sin, etc., right? So that was the reason. That passage is the reason why the rabbis defined Adonai as being the representative of God's compassion and Elohim being the representative of God's judgment. All right? So this poem then reflects that. And again, that you find that tension throughout the Mahzor, right? And we quiver and quake at the thought of God's judgment, and we yell out to God, remember us, find your compassion. We try to move God from the throne of judgment to the throne of compassion, right? All these different metaphors. The point being that's our job. That's our job.
There's no justice here. There's no
and what's very interesting is that it assumes that if we do this sincerely, yes, we do this with sincerity, can have an impact on God. And it's an interesting concept, because normally we say, well, what could we do that could have an impact on God? Well, apparently we can do things. And of course, the bottom line is, remember that ultimately the book is closed on Hoshana Rabbah, right? At the end of Sukkot, the book of judgment, which sort of means we either have time to complete the process of tshuva if we haven't finished it by Yom Kippur, or God gives us an opportunity to test us to see if our tshuva was sincere, that we had begun to change our behavior, and if he sees that we really haven't, that our prayers have only been lip service, but our attitudes haven't changed, maybe he'll switch us to the wrong side of the book or put us in the other book, Anyway, but this is this tension, if you will, is part of the high holiday theology and spirituality. But the fact that we can talk to God like this and say, hey, come on, remember this, remember the covenant, you made a promise, right? We're playing Moses, right? Moses said that after the golden calf, and that's why God didn't destroy the people. Okay, he said the same thing after the spies too, and God didn't destroy the people. So Moshe knew how to push his buttons. Hopefully we've learned to. Maybe we can push some good buttons. But, that requires sincere effort on our part. And nobody in those events with Moshe could doubt his sincerity. Okay. All right. So moving on. Now this is going to get somewhat complex, because the fact is these words, what's really interesting here is all of these different terms reflect different aspects of God, and they have meanings, some of which are not the way that we normally understand these words, okay? So I mentioned already, here, bochein levavot, all right? Bochein levavot. That term you can find in Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 3, okay? Where Jeremiah says, you tested my heart. And there are many places where you find that God is bochen klayot b'lev. God tests our guts, our innards, and our heart. Okay, so that's a very traditional biblical passage. Again, this notion of deep knowledge, goes deep within us to understand, to learn about us and what we have done. Okay, so we talk. So the point here is, you'll notice in the way Kalir has structured the poem, it begins with bochein, with a noun and a verb and a noun, right? God, bochein, tests the heart. Next, he reveals deep things. He speaks right, just things. So it's biyom din, badin, on the day of judgment and in the process of judgment. So clearly, the poem, just in terms of that word repeating itself over and over and over again, sort of, it sets the tone of the seriousness of the process of judgment.
Even all the sentences start with a lamed. Is that also deliberate?
No, that's because it's another poetic device, absolutely. But it's because each one of these things, again, we have crowned. Whom have we crowned? We have crowned the Le'el Orech Din. We put the crown for the God who sets up justice, for the God that lamed connects us back to the very first line. U'b'chein lecha hakol yaktiru. Right? We all have crowned you as the God who does this, the one who searches the hearts, the one who reveals deep things over and over and over again. So you can see here it's clearly poetic, right? The fact that you have the lamed, the biyom din, the din, it's a highly structured poem. Okay, so that's the use of lameds, yes. Okay, so God is dover meisharim, Isaiah chapter 33, verse 15, you will find that term. It's in the notes here, if you look on the side. And then lohogedeyot we talked about. Okay, we talked about hogedeyot. And then chomel ma'asav. Chomel means the same thing as mochel. Well, mochel is to forgive. Chomel means to have compassion for. It's a synonym for l'rachem. Okay? Now look what it says, ma'asav. What does that mean? The thing, God's creations, God's creatures. So who are God's creatures?
Every person and animal.
That's what it sounds like.
Insects.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah. It's in this, but sometimes the rabbis play fast and loose with Hebrew terms, because there are places in the Talmud where God will talk about the briot, right? The briot, that means creatures, but he's talking about people. So, so it's not clear, but it's possible that, this could imply here on this day of judgment that God's including all creatures. And this is going to pop up next week because the next 2 weeks, the last 2 sessions, we're going to deal in depth with the Unatana Tokef. And have I got some stuff to teach you that things about it you never knew before. So it's, I got some surprises for you. Okay.
We're going to be clay in your hands?
No, I'm not the Yotzer. No, I'm not the Yotzer. No. I have a Yotzer. They might have a Yotzer Hara. Hopefully I also have a Yotzer Atov.
You do.
Thank
you. Definitely.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Now, moving on. But here, look, next line with a Vav. Levatik v'oseh chesed. Okay? Levatik. Today, if you go in, which I did, if you open up the Standard Dictionary today, the first meaning of vatik is old. In Hebrew and Israel, you have vetek. Vetek means you are, like, for example, a tenure. You've got tenure. Like a tenured professor has vetek, vav taf kuf, which means oldness. In other words, he's already stuck there, okay? Permanence, okay? Permanence, all right? So, vatik v'oseh chesed, okay? So it means but what does it mean here? Okay, look at the translation.
Wise.
Well, wise, it doesn't, that's a loose translation. Okay. The fact is, and I'm going to go to my notes now, because I actually have done
You made kindness.
Is it spelled the same way as like Ir Atika?
Well, no, Atik, it's interesting. That means old. Okay, yes, that means old. But in Arabic, batik it's interesting. I have it right here in my notes from the Jastrow dictionary. Atzak is the equivalent of batik. Okay. And it's got both an ayin and a taf. Okay. So this is very interesting, and a kuf. What it means is enduring, trusty, strong, distinguished, and it's used as a distinguished scholar. Okay, and then there's the term. It's also used the vatikin. See that with the people who used to read the Psalms early in the morning, conscientiously pious men of former days. Okay, so it really refers to a distinguished, strong, trusting God, not necessarily an old God. All right. So that's worthy of consideration here. That's what this is about. All right. And he's oseh chesed. Yes. He's oseh chesed. He performs acts of loving kindness. See, that now we're switching. Right. This is not the judge anymore. This is a compassionate God. And then the next one, Zocher Brito, right? God remembers his covenant. We've talked about that, right? So that is an indication of his compassion, right? And that goes back, as I said before, to Exodus chapter 32, right? Where Moses is yelling at God and says, you haven't got a covenant with this people. You can't break it. Not you. You don't break covenants. Okay. You know who also said that, interestingly? It's going to surprise you. In Romans, Paul the apostle, he says God doesn't break promises. God doesn't break covenants. Interesting. Yeah. All right, just throw that out there just for your consideration. All right, anyway. So he remembers his brit. Yes, and that's going to be a major theme, right, in the high holidays. Major theme. All right. So then we talked about this, Chomel Ma'asav, right? He has compassion for his creatures. Yes. He's compassionate toward them. Then Taher Chosav. He purifies those whom he protects, right? He purifies. In other words, he protects us, right? We find that chus v'chanem, right? V'arachem aleinu. Chus, it's associated with compassion, but it means to care for, lachus, right? To be responsible for, to care for someone. So, but he purifies us. In other words, God really wants us to be pure of sin. So he will purify us. It's not just that we do it. He will help us be pure. All right. Now we have Yodea Machshavot. This takes us back to the same as Hogedeyot before, right? He knows our thoughts. All right. So now we're sneaking in a little judgment thing here, that God knows our thoughts. It means, he's looking. Now remember that the poet, because it's an alphabetic acrostic, also has to consider the use of words that begin with certain letters. So he decided to put the yud of Yodea here, even though it's sort of out of, because look at the next one. It kovesh ka'aso. He conquers his anger. So that's sort of, again, that's the other side of the coin. All right, but kovesh ka'aso, that's what God does because he's compassionate, right? And in a sense, you can see that in Adonai El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim means he's long suffering, right? He can take it without getting angry and exploding. All right, he can control his anger. Okay, now Lovesh Tzedakot, right? God is cloaked in righteousness. Cloaked in righteousness. Going to come back to that in a little bit. All right. Now tzedakot is more like tzedakah. It's plain tzedek, right? Tzedakot tzedakah is more associated with righteousness, not necessarily justice, right? And so that's what this is. This is not strict, narrow judgment, tzedek of judgment. It's tzedakot. Acts of tzedakah, of righteousness, which is a much softer term. Then, mochel avonot, the mem, forgiving of sin, plain out. Then, norah tehilot. Now we're not talking about anything other than God's power. He's awesome in the psalm, in the praise that he gets, right? Norah, what does that mean? Awesome, awe. A-W-E. It's from the root Yud Resh Aleph, which means to fear, right? You are a God-fearer. Yirat Shamayim, fear of heaven. Okay? So, but it means, it's fear, it's quaking in the presence of this amazing power. Now that is something that tends to be more associated with the threats of judgment. So there you go. That's much more in terms of strength rather than compassion. But then what comes right after it? Soleach la'amu sav, right? God forgives the carried ones. What is amus? Well, if you look at the note toward the bottom of the page in the English there, this is a reference to Isaiah 46:3, which uses a maternal image to describe God's relationship with Israel. Okay, so he carries us like a mother would be carried in the womb, a child in the womb, protecting us, sustaining us. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Is that the same verse? And I'm not remembering offhand, but there's a verse that I love where the root is related to Amen, and it likens Moshe to a nursing mother. Is that from the same section?
Yes. Is that?
I think it's in Shemos. I just don't remember right now. But
is that in Bamidbar chapter 11 where he complains to God that he carried his?
Oh no. Yes, I think you're right. I think it's Bamidbar, not Shemos, but I've always, not always.
Right,
lately.
but he's questioning. He says, "Did I create this people? Did I carry them? Am I their nurse?" I think that's when he's complaining to God that he's got too much. He can't bear the burden of leadership. It's a very tragic, powerfully tragic statement that he's making. I think that's what it is, but I don't want to take the time right now to look it up. But yes, that is so simple. But that's with an olive. Yeah, right. That's not amuz. That's a different term. But yes, it's the same idea, though. The use of the metaphor of a mother with a child. Yes. In fact, Moses is saying, am I supposed to, carry this child, in my arms, so to speak? It's your baby, not mine, is what Moses is saying. Right. Then it goes on. La'oneh korav, right? God responds to those who call out to him. That's us. We are his korav. We call out, koreh, right? We cry out to God. And here again, poel rachamav, he activates his compassion in judgment. See, poel rachamav, badin, in the process of judgment, he activates his compassion. Now here again, looking deep within, sofeh nistarot, God sees the hidden things. All right, that's like what we saw up above, right? That he looks, goleh amukot. It's the same thing as the gimel, at the top of the column. Same concept, revealing secret things. Now, koneh abadav. Koneh, most people today, you use that verb meaning to buy, but that's not what it really means. It means to acquire, right? So God acquires his servants. So what's the implication here?
Is it marriage? Because it's like a kinyan? Is it like the acquisition that's done in marriage?
The acquisition. That's right. Is that Bible?
Yep.
Very good. I said at the beginning, before you were all there, that I was going to refer to a Mishnah. So here I go. In the Mishnah Kiddushin, 1:1, right? This deals with the laws of marriage. Okay. So it says, Ha'isha nikneit, a woman is acquired in 3 ways. I'm not going to go into details. The woman is acquired. And then the next passage after that is fully fleshed out. It says, Eved Ivri nikneh, a Hebrew slave is acquired. Now, this is not God acquiring. This is people. But now it's transferred here. So when you do that, what does it mean? I mean, you got to think in the context of this poem. What does it mean that God is koneh us? We are God's servants, right? We are God's servants. All right. So what does it mean then when it says God acquires us?
We have to agree.
We belong to him.
We have to what?
I said first, and then Rini said, we have to agree that's the nature of acquisition.
It could be, but I don't know that that's really what he's talking about here, because it's talking from his side. He's acquiring us.
That we belong to him.
We belong to him. What does it imply?
That we are his children.
We are his, if we belong to him and we are in his possession, then what does one feel toward something precious that's in your possession?
Love. Chesed. Rachmanut.
Compassion.
But you also think it's a treasure, the whole Am Segula thing.
A treasure, yes. responsibility. Exactly. The point is, it's a positive statement. It has a lot to do with responsibility, especially in the context of a person acquiring. I mean, personally, this is Rembaum speaking here. I don't like that language because koneh means to acquire, and I don't think I acquired my wife.
It's almost slave-like.
It is. Well, the fact is, the second one is you acquire a slave, and if you go down the list, the next thing is the Neved Kanani, a non-Israelite slave, and you know what the last one is? A cow. You acquire an animal. All right?
That we do.
Yeah, so I mean, the point is that the notion of, we use the term at a wedding, right? When you pull on the Kinyan Sudar, when the groom, I do the bride and the groom, okay, because I'm egalitarian. In this traditional way, the groom pulls on the cloth when the ketubah is signed, or before the ketubah is signed, implying that he acquires the woman and all the responsibilities thereunto appertain. When I do it in the sense of each one acquiring the other, I say you are acquiring responsibilities for each other mutually. Okay? But the term is there. Kiddushin, in a sense, is used as a much more, I say, spiritual surrogate for kinyan. Sanctification. It elevates the process, and you can interpret it differently. But I personally don't like that concept. I mean, I'm totally against patriarchy, 100% against patriarchy. That's another subject, but you should know that. I'm happy to share that with you at any time. Anyway, so God is responsible for us. Okay. Now, then it continues. L'rachem amo. Right? He has compassion for his people. Yes. Then next one. Shomer ohavav. Right? He guards, he protects, he takes care of those whom he loves. And similarly, tomech tamimav. And he supports those who are his tamimim. It could be innocent ones, but I think it also means those whose faith is whole, is tamim, is complete. Those who have faith in him. Okay? So here we are. This amazing poem that deals within the context of an alphabetic acrostic, with a lot of lameds, with biyomdin, badin, a highly worked up, when Kalir wrote this, he was really at his what shall we say, his poetic moxie at work. Okay? And it's an amazing piece. It's an amazing piece. So this is the what we say in Shachrit. Right after this comes the Kedusha. Okay? And so there's no reference at all to that term. Not at all. But that's because the one thing we will do in the Kedusha, we define God's holiness. We say Kadosh, 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 right? And then what do we say at the last one? Hallelujah, right? God will rule forever. So his kingship is affirmed, much as this implies it. But it says at the beginning, Yaktiru, right? Yaktiru, the very beginning, crowned. So we're talking here about the king, who is also the supreme judge. Okay. Any thoughts to this point? All right. So when you read this, I mean, it'd be interesting for you to think about this, when we get to this point in the high holiday services, to see how you relate to it. Okay. Obviously, the notions here are very ancient notions about how God operates. And people, go ahead. Yes.
Who wrote the first line? The one that starts with Uvachein Lecha? I'm assuming it wasn't the author of the piyut, because the second line is in bold. So who would have written that first line, or is that the Lev Shalem?
Go outside.
Wait. Shh. Oh, okay. She's taking the dog out. All right. It's. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think it's not just the bold, but if it's an alphabetical piyut, it's not. The aleph is the next line.
Right, but sometimes though, you have people who will. I mean, remember this is it's in the language of the uvachein paragraphs we had before, right? So it's a good point. I'm not sure if this is something that the later compilers of the prayers added in the spirit of the other uvachein paragraphs, right, which are also part of the kedusha. So it could be that. Yeah, it could be that an editor, a prayer book, a compiler of prayers for purpose of public worship could have put that in with the notion of highlighting the kingship of God. But I'm just curious. It could be it. It's interesting. Obviously it makes sense because God is the supreme. The king is the supreme judge. There's absolutely no question about that. So it could be, that it's another hand may have done it. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, let me talk to you something else. And I just realized this today, and I went absolutely meshuggah about it. All right. Now, I want you to go back to page, one second, here we are. Go back to page 83. The Atahu Eloheinu. Okay? Now, I want you to look at the style. Okay? The way it's set up, of course, sort of gives it away, but everything is, you have these dual things, these two different elements in each separate segment. So Eloheinu b'shamayim v'ba'aretz, gibor v'na'aretz, dagul meravava, usach v'yehi, v'tziva v'nivra'u, zichro l'netzach, Hi olamim, tahor einayim. Tahor einayim. Isn't that interesting? Over here, his taher chosam. Look at that. All right, Yoshev Sefer. Kitro Yeshua. There's a keter. There may be, I don't know. Levusho tzedakah. Look at that. Levusho tzedakah. And lo and behold, what do we have over here? Lelovesh tzedakot. You see that? All right. And you have over here Onel Marav, and down below on the Atau Elohim, Karov Lekorav. All right. There's my point is the style here is very similar, but this notion of Lovesh, which Kalir got from Isaiah chapter 59, which we talked about last time, pops up over here as well. Lovesh tzedakot, wearing, right, garbed in something. So you can see here that there's a style that this is Kalir. You can see the same style at work. The way you have these two words and then followed by another two words. Okay? I mean, some of these like Sadiq Yashar is very common, but you have here, Dover Mesharim. I mean, but the point is, there is a similarity in the tone between the two poems. They're from the same poet. All right, but here's the other thing that really sort of blew my mind. I thought there was another compilation of wait, hold on, I'm trying to find my papers here just a minute. Yeah, here they are. There's a whole other thing that you are familiar with that relates very much what we are talking about. Wait a second. I had the papers and I can't find where I put them. Hold on a second. Just wait a minute. Oh, here we are. I got them. Okay. All right. I'm not going to have you open this up because it'll take time in the Mahzor. So, but I want you to, you're probably familiar with this. This is La'el Baruch Ne'imot Yitenu. This is the line that leads up the words that lead up to Yotzer, blessing Yotzer HaMa'orot. Praise are you, God, who creates the lights. This is in Shacharit. This is the end of the first blessing before the Shema. Now just listen to what it says. So tell me what it sounds like, right? First of all, it begins La'el Baruch Ne'imot Yitenu. Offer adulation to God, La'el, the Lamed, okay? Okay, now here it is. Hu levado, he by himself is Poel Gevurot, Oseh Hadashot, Baal Milchamot, Zorea Tzedakot, Matzmiach Yeshuot, Borei Refuot, No Ra Tehilot, Adon HaNiflaot. Do you hear it? Same style, exactly. And there is one term here that is identical here. No Ra Tehilot. Look at the Nun. No Ra Tehilot. Okay? So the question is, did Kalir also write this piece that is in the Shacharit prayers that we say every single day? Did he? Perhaps. I don't know. If not, clearly the style that he established had a profound influence on people in this period of time who composed prayers. What period of time are we talking about? We're talking about 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, mostly 5th, 6th, 7th century. The 400s, 500s, 600s of the Common Era, perhaps even into the 700s. So this is a period of time when this style was really a dominant style. And it pops up in these little poetic segments, but even more than that, in other ways elsewhere. So you can see here, and it's interesting, people are looking at some of the products of that period and seeing the themes and the way language is expressed. It's all under the Byzantine control of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, the Christian Roman government. And there are statements and terms within the prayers of the Byzantine Christians that are similar to some of these. And there are Jewish scholars who look at this and they suggest that it's very likely the same way that you have themes that pop up in the Talmud and you find it in the Bible and you find it in medieval Jewish literature where they're drawing on themes and terms from the surrounding culture and repurposing them for use in the context of Jewish sacred literature. So it's not, so it could be the larger culture influencing a group of poets, a school of poets, if you will, who create these poems. And it's a powerful influence because the common denominator in all this stuff is, it's also something you find we've talked about this in the mystical literature of the time, where God is described multiple times in multiple ways. And that's the way the people theologically during that period expressed the fact that this God is a God who transcends our normal experience. The fact that you have multiple expressions like that, it means that this is a God you have difficulty defining. So we're going to over-define him, right? We're going to lay it on. Example, you've heard me say this before, right? Remember, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'nasei v'yitadar. It's poetry. It's the hitpael form. over and 8 times. All of it meaning God is praised, he's praised, he's praised, he's praised, he's praised. Okay, enough, he's praised. Yes, we admit it, he's praised. But 8 times we say it. Same way of thinking. So these are it's a kind of, as I see it, it's biblically, I think you find it in the Bible, where people, even the people who wrote different parts of the Bible, realized that you really cannot use language to totally define God. It's an imperfect tool. And of course, the medieval philosophers and mystics come right out and say that we can really never fully comprehend God because we are human beings. So that's something that I think even moderns can wrap their arms around. Okay? Science helps, but it's limited because it's, it deals, astrophysics deals, with stuff, that's way out there, right? But can it talk? Can it find compassion as a divine element in all of that? No, it can find an ordering principle. Can't find Rahmanis though, right? So I mean, it's part, but the faith of these people was such that they recognized that the limitations that they have in understanding a God who is ultimate and infinite, which are concepts that we have difficulty understanding because we are limited and we're time limited, right? We are limited in our capacities, and we're trying to talk about an entity that is the exact opposite. So go talk about it. And so this is what they're trying to do in this period of time. So in the meantime, what they're doing is they're showing you the details of how they understand God is working, all these little subtle ways, insights, and so forth. And so that it carries over. But now, the most interesting thing, what really struck me, as I was repeating some of these terms, I said to myself, think about it this way. There's a melody you could almost use here. All right, you ready? Levochen levavot b'yom din, legol le'amukot ba'din, ledover mesharim b'yom din. What am I chanting?
Simchas Torah.
What?
It's for Simchas Torah.
Simchas Torah. Exactly. Right? Elohei haruchot Hoshiana. All right, now, you ready? Bochein levavot. There it is. Bochein levavot. Right there. You see it? There it is. Okay. Goel chazak anenu b'yom koreinu. Dover tzedakot, dover meshaharim.
Your own hakafot.
Tzedakot, okay? Hoshiana, hadur bilvusho. And over here it says, what is it? Luvusho, something, luvusho tzedakot. Hatzlichana. Now look at this one. Vatik v'chasid. And over here it says, what does it say? Levatik v'oseh chesed. It's so almost identical. And here we are. This is Simchat Torah, and this is a poem for Rosh Hashanah, right? Yodea machshavot. It's right over here. Lovesh tzedakot, right? I mean, it's so similar. Wait, I'm not finished. Tomech timimav Hoshiana. There it is. And by the way, over here in the Hoshan, in the Hoshiana, Rachum ve'anun. Okay, there's Rachum. And then it says Shomer Habrit. So here we have Shomer Havav and Zocher Brito. But you have Rachem, Shomer, and Tomech here, and you have Rahem, Shomer, and Tomech in our poem. So there you have it.
Is the Simchas Torah one also by Kalir?
I don't know. I was trying to look for it. I haven't found it yet. It would, if not, then it's what I said before. This is a period piece.
Because it seems from what you're showing us that it's not coincidence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you find a structure, when you see,
I've never heard this melody used for Leil Orech.
No, forget about the melody. That's late. That has nothing to do with it.
So close,
but it works, right? So again, this we're going to conclude on this point. We owe a great debt to the poets who wrote in this sort of fuzzy period of Jewish history. There's not a lot of historical documents that teach us about that period in time. Late Talmudic period in Eretz Yisrael. The Jewish community at that time, we know, was quite depressed. The major center of Jewish life, where everybody focused their attention, is Bavel, right? Is the Mesopotamian Jewish community, where the Babylonian Talmud was. The Eretz Yisrael Talmud was finished about 475, 500. And by the way, a lot of the terms that you see here in these things, you'll find them more commonly referred to, if they are Talmudic, in the Eretz Yisrael Talmud than in the Talmud Bavli. So clearly this is all Eretz Yisrael produced stuff. But it's amazing that even in a period of economic, bad economic times, politically, religiously oppressive times, these poems emerge. They come out of that period, and then they have a profound impact on subsequent generations of poets and people who write liturgy, and it becomes part and parcel of our ancient tradition and our today's tradition in the prayer books that we use today. So, very interesting stuff, I would say. And what I love about this, what really got me excited is it really sort of helps us to understand what I just said, the notion of the impact that this period has, because we don't often think about this period. When we think about this period, we think about the Jews in the Persian Empire, not the Jews in the Roman Empire, because they're having a bad time. Okay. And so next week, we will continue with our study of the liturgy, and this is a much more complex poem, the Unatana Tokef, a very powerful poem. It speaks of power from the very beginning. But here too, I think I have some interesting new pieces of information to share with you that might raise an eyebrow or two. And that's long, so we'll have to devote two sessions to it, and then that'll bring us to the conclusion. Okay? Questions, comments, observations? All righty then. So I shall see you next week, same time, same station.
Joel, I would make a comment that so far you're reviewing these poems with us has helped me a lot for when it comes to praying on Rosh Hashanah, to understand them in the more depth. So I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, that was my purpose. And I can tell you the same thing with me, because I've never really read them over. I've taught them in different ways, but I've never looked at them in this depth. It's fascinating. It's just the power of poetry. It's the power of poetry, folks.
When you're in rabbinical school, do you get poetry classes?
Well, I was in rabbinical school a long time ago.
Oh,
we never studied liturgy in our Bible. No, they do now. And I know at Ziegler they study liturgy. I'm assuming at the seminary they do. No, when we were there, that's not something rabbis had to study. You knew it. You davened. You knew it. That's all. Liturgy is amazing stuff. More Jews in the course of history read and knew of these things, knew these words, than they knew of a sugya in the Gemara. You know, this was everybody did this stuff. They didn't necessarily read it. There were no books back then. They heard it. They listened to it. Okay, and hopefully somebody helped them understand it. But that I don't know.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.